So this video, we're now going to be taking a look at the difference between apocrine sweat glands, or apocrine sweat, and eccrine sweat. And of course, these are coming from the glands. Now, both of these terms here, apocrine sweat and eccrine sweat, are under the term sweat glands. Sweat glands. Now, another word that you will see is Seedorf's glands. Seedorf's glands. These are all synonyms here. So Seedorf's glands, sweat glands, all depends on how your professor's asking the question. But this is kind of the same thing. Now, and again, the sweat glands is the umbrella term for apocrine sweat and eccrine sweat. So this is the umbrella term, and these are the two types. So what is the difference here? So we have the apocrine sweat coming from this stick figure, and the eccrine sweat coming from this baby stick figure. Now, so first of all, eccrine sweat glands, they start from, not newborn, but starts from birth. So these glands start secreting sweat. You see the baby crying and a little sweat on his forehead there. Coming down, the baby's crying, and the sweat's coming down. Now that sweat is coming from the eccrine sweat glands. These glands and this sweat starts from birth immediately. However, this baby here also still has these apocrine sweat glands, but they're not turned on yet. They're not turned on yet. When do they turn on? So we see this baby's born, it's getting older, it's turning 1, and it's turning 2, and 3, and 4. Then it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then let's say it's 12 now. Hitting puberty, hormones raging. Now, these apocrine sweat glands, when this person here, who's now turned into a sort of a mini adult here as a 12-year-old, these glands will start to turn on as puberty hits. And some of those glands are in the chest area, definitely in the armpits. That's why you see little boys start to smell. All of these type of things, because these apocrine sweat glands have started to fire up. Why? Because the apocrine sweat glands start from puberty. That is the difference. Apocrine sweat glands started puberty. Eccrine sweat glands started birth. Now, there is moments, now that this person is 12 years old, where both of these will be firing off at the same time. Both of these will be firing off. Now, what is the difference between, so we have this person here sweating, and let's say this person gets a little bit older and they start to grow facial hair, and, they got a little beard, right? I have a beard. And they have some hair on their head, and they start to get a little bit older. Now, when this person sweats, what is the difference in the actual water part of the sweat from the apocrine sweat? Apocrine sweat. So we have some drips of sweat falling down here. So let's have a little drop of sweat. Here's our sweat. And then we have the baby also is going to sweat some too. So the baby's crying or the baby is sweating. So we have a little sweat here for the baby. Now, this is the drop. This is the sweat drop, and this is another sweat drop. Now, what is the difference between these? Both of these sweat drops, have the same thing inside of them, but the apocrine sweat has everything that the eccrine does, plus lipids and proteins that the eccrine sweat doesn't have. That is the difference. And this sweat, by the way, is also sometimes a little milky. It's a little thicker than the sweat from the eccrine sweat, from the eccrine glands. So that is the main difference here. So 2 points here. 1, the eccrine sweat gland started birth, while the apocrine sweat gland started puberty. The apocrine sweat is a little bit thicker because it has lipids and proteins, and this one doesn't have lipid and proteins. So this is the big picture difference between apocrine sweat glands and eccrine sweat glands.